season of being. So close your eyes. Notice the beat of your heart. Your in-breath and your out-breath. Feeling your feet on the ground, your back and your bottom on the chair. And coming fully into the present moment. Let yourself more deeply feel what that means to be fully in the present moment. Letting go of your way here and letting go of whatever is the next moment. Feeling the vibration in your body, as slight as it may be. Knowing there's always movement. We are never completely still. And let this moment be sweet as honey. Because it is. Let this moment be sacred and miraculous, because it is. And then with your eyes closed, listen to these words. Words, if bees could speak. We wake up to the understanding that we are all one, all the time. Human beings exist connected each to each, but believe they are not. Honeybees dwell in the full realization of that connection and have done so for eons. The unity we embody is a reflection of the kingdom-wide unity that dwells in all of us. This is the gift we bring. Complete sacred unity in body and spirit. To be in the presence of spirit, to simply sit and be in such presence offers the opportunity to be transformed by it. This we offer you. Come and sit. Be with us. Drink in the unity as you would fresh rain. We offer our gift with great joy and love. Slowly, when you are ready, open your eyes. Thank you, Amazon, for being on time. Good morning. Welcome to Center for Spiritual Living Morristown. I am Frankie, the spiritual director here. And I'm so glad that you decided to get up this morning and come here. I know there's probably a million things you'd rather do. For some of you, just no. So what I want to tell you about is this wonderful program that the practitioners and I have created for you. Usually we have a fall program. Now it's a spring program. And it's called A Season of Being, BEE-ING. And it's a 7-week inspirational program based on this beautiful, beautiful book called Song of Increase, that I believe it's on its way to the bookstore soon. It's by Jacqueline Freeman, who's becoming my new best friend. And so the practitioners and I will be guiding you through an experience that will remind us all of the sacredness of our existence and our beautiful earth by exploring the life and the wisdom of bees. We will be diving into topics including unity, belonging, communion, and abundance, and how to make the world a better place simply by being mindful and proactive. We will have some surprise guests, and we will have some deepening experiences. And we're working on having some items in our center and in the bookstore that are bee-centric. Remember that word, you'll hear more about it. They're already there. Go check out the bookstore, they're already there. Yay, Cindy! So join us as many weeks as you can, and if you wish, read along in the book once it's available in the bookstore, or just get it on Amazon. So, that said, let's do an opening treatment, which is our word for affirmative prayer. So right here, right now, I let this moment be the richest moment of my life. When I speak from the I am, I simply speak to the divinity within each and every one of us, which is where we are all connected and all one. So right here, right now, I open my mind, my heart, my body, and my soul to the sacredness of all life that is ever present. It is everywhere present. When I look through the eyes of the sacred, everything becomes sacred. And I'm on a spiritual path to awaken to my sacred nature. I am on a spiritual path to know this for everyone. Everything, everywhere, all the time. That's a tall order, I know. And I am ready for it because I wouldn't be here today listening to these words. And so I'm blessed to be part of a spiritual community, a hive, so to say, that is truly working together in unity, celebrating the awareness of God's Spirit, universal essence in everything, everyone, everywhere, all the time. Trusting that I am always in the right place at the right time with the right people, learning something new about the sacredness of life. And so I let this program, this next 7 weeks, be such a blessing, not just to us, but the community at large, and most of all, to the bees. And so we are blessed. We allow this morning to be an even greater blessing as we welcome this new season of spring, when nature is in its glory. And so we turn this word over to the universal law, knowing that it simply says yes for each of us in a unique way. And so it is. You didn't want me to hear rehearsing. So, it is such a privilege to have practitioners here at the center and to really get creative with them. Because one of the things that we usually do when we do a program is we start with visioning. And visioning is where we listen to our higher self. We listen to the voice of spirit, which is the same thing. And then it guides us into what this will look like. And that's true for everything we do here, but especially with this wonderful program. And so last year, Eileen Gantz came back from Louisville, Kentucky, with this book. And the first thing I always do, because I'm always thinking work, but in a good way, is I look at the content. And whenever it has 7 or 8 chapters, man, there's a class or a workshop or a program. And immediately when I looked at the chapter, I was like, oh, this would be such a great program for the fall. And the practitioner was kind of like, there's so much going on, we're doing the solstice, why don't we do it in spring? Duh, of course, springtime, how wonderful an opportunity to explore the life of bees and to bring them into how they truly are our gurus. They're our messengers. They teach us about life and especially about spiritual life. So I contacted the author, Jacqueline Freeman, and she's a biodynamic farmer and a natural beekeeper, and she appeared in the movie Queen of the Sun. I quickly threw together a little flyer, so just pass a few of them out, just so you can see. There will be more, but on Friday, Cindy and Rosemary will be showing this movie, and we'll try to show it one more time. It's called Queen of the Sun, and it's an amazing, amazing movie about the life of bees. And Jacqueline is in the movie, so of course I had to get the movie. She has a very small role at the end. But she speaks internationally on organic beekeeping, women in agriculture, permaculture, and building an expansive relationship with nature. When I began to explore her website, I just fell in love with her. She is just a beautiful person, so we began to email each other because I want her to come and visit. And she said, my best friend of 25 years lives in Morristown. So I said, invite her to come. And she found out that she's not in touch with her that much anymore, but she moved away, and she's further away. And then this week, I asked her if she has a non-for-profit organization, because every month we give $1,000 to an organization that's doing good work in the world, but they have to be non-profit. And she says, oh yes, I have an organization called Preservation Beekeeper. And so I went on the website and I just drooled. It was just amazing. They're doing amazing work, so we're going to send them $1,000 as a gift because of us doing this program. And then she said, by the way, because I had mentioned to her I'm from the Netherlands, and she says, by the way, I think we might be cousins, because my sister did an analysis on the genealogy, and my great somebody is from Holland. And so now she calls me her cousin. So we're having this wonderful connection with each other, and I said, I knew you looked like a Dutch girl, because when you see it's just something I see. When I saw the website, I'm like, she looks like a Dutch girl. So we're having a wonderful time and connecting with each other, and it's beginning to just blossom and explode, and I just expect so many wonderful things will come from this program for all of us. So I have always loved bees. I'm the only person, I'm one of the few person when bees run around that don't go, ah! I just stop until they fly away. Maybe it's because all my life I felt a deep connection with animals, all animals, and I always was fascinated with the whole idea of the production of honey and pollen and how magical that is. So the most important thing for us to know, I think many of you already know this, is that bees are quite a mystery. They are disappearing at very rapid numbers, and I'll come back to that. But there's 3 types of bees. There's the worker bee, the queen bee, and the drone bee. The queen bee lays about 600 to 800 eggs a day. The whole mating process is really interesting because she flies out of the hive and the drones, the males, come up and she decides which ones impregnate her, and there's about 12 of them. And then she just goes back to the hive and lays eggs and eggs and eggs and eggs and eggs until she dies. So the lifespan of a bee in winter is 9 months, and in summer, 1.5 months. They stroke their wings 11,400 times a minute, hence the buzzing sound. 80% of all crops are pollinated by honeybees. That means $20 billion worth of crops a year. We consume 285 million pounds of honey a year. So half of our crops, third of our crops, are because of the honeybees. And they also increase the production of fruits, vegetables, herbs, and flowers by up to 25%. In 2006, and many of you may have heard that, 25% of all bees in the United States died. They don't know for sure why, but it's called colony collapse disorder. They think it's because of the chemicals, the toxic chemicals that we have been using. Makes you think, right? And so, still, many millions of bees have abandoned their hives, and about hundreds of thousands are still dying every day. The other cause, besides toxicity, is that there is this thing called migratory beekeeping, which I didn't even know I learned about in the movie, which is where when bees are produced or cultivated for consumerism purposes and greed purposes, they are traveling on trucks around the United States to pollinate different crops. And apparently that kills them too, because not only are they in a truck, in boxes, taking in these fumes, but they're constantly being moved around. And they're just set free, they're pollinating, and then they're put back in the boxes, taken somewhere else. So that's a part of it. And the last one is the concept of monoculture cropping, which is when you just have crops that are just one kind of crop. Like in California, they have the almond trees, right? So I'm not going to get into that very deeply, but we will come back to it. The book really, its message is about bee-centric beekeeping. What that means is that the interest is in the bees. The interest is not in consumption, in selling more honey or pollen, but it's really called natural beekeeping or guardianship, and it goes about the needs of the bees. And the beekeeper that's their main interest. Does that sound familiar to some of us? It sounds familiar to me because we have become so self-absorbed and so self-focused, and we're so much about consuming and greed that even spirituality has become about consumption. And so we are in the culture like that, just to get more of, to have more of. And so they need us, but we need them more. And so the program is about creating awareness, but also creating some action around it. The most beautiful tie that Jacqueline Freeman makes in this book is about the generosity of the bees. You know, bees don't go, enough already, you greedy little person. I'm not giving anymore. They just are generous. They're always in service. They're always in service to each other. They're always in service to the hive, the tribe. And her most cool saying is, just let the bee be the bee. And when we let bees be bees, they thrive. It's that simple. And she says, I always arrive at the hive with a sense of reverence, a remembrance in the sacred, with respect, with gratitude, and with generosity. And they never sting her anymore. And so that's such a beautiful connection with spiritual life. And the more I read the book, and you're going to hear more as we go along in these next few weeks, the more I read the book, the more I am just in love with these bees. It's a whole different experience already. So what we're learning in this teaching, in any spiritual teaching, is that we're all spiritual beings. And when we forget that we are spiritual beings, that's when we suffer. That's when we collapse. That's when we get sick. So that's the message I've been giving in the last few weeks that were a little rough, I'm aware, but it needed to be said. I just felt them, that the biggest problem that's happening on this planet, in this world, is that we have forgotten that life is sacred. It's that simple. And so it's for us to say, how can I bring the sacred back? In my home, in my body, in my relationships, in my place of work, in my neighborhood, in my family, and so on. And so what is the message then? Well, the message for us is the same message as in the Song of Increase, which is the first two steps of treatment. Step one is, God is, what's that called? Recognition. Step one is always recognition. What do we recognize? That God is all there is. Step one in treatment, the step of recognition, is your definition of what God is. If you don't like the word God, change it for God's sake. Call it green pickles. I don't care. Call it something that makes you feel it. And Ernest Holmes has 25 words for it. So go to the textbook and pick a word that makes your heart sing. But step one is the step of recognition. That is our definition of God. We declare first, God is. Step two is called what? Unification. What does that step say? I am one with that which I have just defined. If that's all you do in prayer, and you don't add the other 3, 5, 10, whatever steps, then you've done enough. That's all that's asked of us. To recognize that there is a power and a presence in the universe that is everywhere present in everyone, everything, all the time. That's a life work, or 2, 3, 4, 5 lives. And that we are one with that. And so are you, and so are you, and so are you, and so is everybody else. So notice where you already say, well, God is not in a garbage can. God is not in Hitler. Then we're out of integrity with the truth. So it's that evolution of our own spirit, our own awakening, that makes us then look for that connection, to see the sacred in it, to look long enough to see the sacred in it, and then to connect with the sacred. And that's it. And so, just like the bees, it's about establishing a unity consciousness. The topic today is being in unity. And so, how do we live that? Because we have an ego, and bees don't. So they do it naturally. But we are supposedly more evolved, and so we get to live these spiritual principles to the best of our ability. And so we get to learn to live in that place of wholeness. And it's living in a place of wholeness, oneness, that we establish unification on this planet, and then the healing begins. Because that's what the bees do. And so she says that what happened is she began to sit by the hives and she began to listen. I mean, I don't know if you can imagine this. I can. But to sit by a hive for an hour and just listen. I mean, I don't know how many of you meditate an hour a day, but my guess is 20%. Imagine that you're sitting by a beehive and you're just listening, and how that transforms you. That's what she did. She sat by the hive and listened. so much and so long. She was so present with the bees. She didn't have her iPhone in her lap. That she began to hear the message of the bees. Because she was that connected. And so what I read earlier in the meditation was one of those messages. She said, once I sat long enough, my mind began to clear. And I began to hear something different. That's what meditation is for me. That when I meditate, my mind gets quiet, and I begin to hear a deeper wisdom, a deeper truth that is already within. And so a typical bee colony is 30 to 50,000 bees. We're like 50, 60 people. And they each work for the good of the hive. They don't fight over a teeny tiny drop of honey. They don't say, did you hear the honey in the other hive? Oh my God, it's so bad. Did you see the queen bee in the other hive? Her colors are just off. So just think, right? That inspires me to live more in concert with my true nature. They each work for the good of the hive. They each work hard to help function the hive perfectly. Listen to this. Every bee is totally committed to doing whatever the colony requires. When a need comes up, the task is answered without hesitation. I've seen a bee signal to another. I've got an itch I can't reach. Or the floor is sticky. Or I dropped a pollen pellet. And other bees jump in to help. Once, while working inside the hive, I inadvertently broke a honeycomb, which fell on the hive floor and made a mess. A whole posse of bees quickly started licking up the honey and carrying it off to store. No one said, I'm busy. Everyone jumped in and cleaned up the mess and then went back to their other tasks. I could tell by their hum there was no blame, frustration, or anxiety, just easygoing cooperation. Each bee does what needs to be done to move the colony forward. How utterly divine that they put the colony first. So they work independently, but in perfect communion. They live in constant devotion, joy, and loving membership. They are strong in their commitment to the task at hand for the whole tribe. They don't give 50-50. They give 100% each. And those of you that are in healthy relationships, you know what that looks like. 100% each. So how could we apply all these messages to create a better world? Well, first I want to say is if you still think you live in the world and it's all about you, you're missing the boat. Because it's not all about you and I anymore, or you and me anymore. It's not about my health, my abundance, my creativity, my job, my house, my car, my spiritual evolution. It's now about the oneness of all life. It's now about all of us. And that's spiritual principle. Because what I do to my brother and sister, I do to myself. What I do to myself, I do to my brother and sister. That's just a reflection of the oneness, right? And so that means it's also not about getting anymore, which sometimes as a spiritual teaching we're a little guilty of. When you first listen to the Prosperity Plus promo video, it may seem that it's about us. But if you really, really listen, you know that when we take responsibility for our own health and well-being, then it affects everyone else around us, as does it when we are diseased and living in lack. And so it's not even about getting anymore, and that's what's so clear about the bees. On page 13, she says, imagine if we woke each day asking ourselves, how could we better the world? How could we sing ourselves into aliveness? Who would we be if we truly understood that we're all connected, that our individual efforts have great value when we undertake actions that better the whole world? And so it's really back to the simplicity of remembering that God, Spirit, is sacred, is all there is, and that we're all connected to it. And then we notice when we feel lack, loss, or limitation. Because lack, loss, and limitation are lies we tell ourselves, and it puts us out of integrity with our spiritual life, our spiritual practices, and each other. When we're in loss, lack, or limitation, we're trying to get something. And when we're trying to get something, we're saying, I don't have. And that's what the universe hears. So we are asking then to be part of the greater good by healing the places where we feel limited in loss and in lack. So we give ourselves a moment. Just pause and remember that spirit within is our true nature and that we're always connected with it. That we get to surrender to what is, knowing it's an invitation to rise up into our essential abundance, the opposite of lack, into our essential fullness and wholeness, the opposite of loss, and into our inherent enoughness, which is the opposite of lack or limitation. And from that place we give. And as we give, we receive. It's when we withhold that we lose, that we experience more lack. So it's really a life of generosity, a life of gratitude, and a life of serving selflessly, knowing that when we're in selfless service, our needs are always met.